We have Barbara Boardman, Jim Russo, Johnny Cosno, Sarah Hotchkiss, and myself, so we have a quorum. We also have our trustee secretary, Susan Alexander, and town planner, Max Johnstone. Are there any, I would like to, in the interest of having, not having the applicant sit through or going through minutes unless she wants to, I will propose that we make an adjustment to the agenda and do the minutes after after new business. Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, seeing nods. Any other adjustments to the agenda, which is about as limited as it has been of late? So,
Scott, I'd like a minute if I could.
What's that?
I would like a minute if I could, just to address the board.
Go ahead.
Just as a matter of full disclosure, Heidi and Mike Riley, her husband, they have my
That's
land.
during the you would say that during the application.
Oh, sorry. I'll stop there and I'll add that at the proper time.
Scott, Johnny told me about what he was going to say. That's something he would bring up during the application. So no changes to the agenda yet.
Okay. Okay. So any comments apart from going to new business? Okay. So.
Why did Max write in pre-application and then write none after it? Why did that get in the agenda? Just in case?
I think he uses a standard format that always has that. So.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
So why don't we go right to then under new business is the dance studio for 931 Winslows Mills Road, excuse me. So, Heidi, are you going to?
I can talk way longer than you want me to, so just tell me when you've had enough.
Okay.
So,
Max?
kind of the weird beginnings. My brother-in-law had actually bought the Grange building in 2012 and had intended to do kind of a community building, general store. So he started doing some really good stuff. He put on a new roof, he put in a new septic system, he started having plumbing and electrical updated. He had all around the building upgraded with the, after he had this new septic put in, because he was thinking heavy delivery trucks were gonna come in and out. So a lot of improvements were made back then. Unfortunately, in 2016, he passed away very unexpectedly. And so my family and I have kind of procrastinated for a while about what to do with the building. Do we want to sell it? Do we want to keep it? I don't know. And we finally decided that we would like to try to keep it. And so a conversation happened between myself and Melanie Pagarko, who is the owner of Dance Mania. She has been a dance teacher for 30-something years. She's pretty well known in the dance family world. She currently rents a space above Madomic Veterinary, which is out on Atlantic on the highway. And she really loves the space. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Grange building at all, but it's a pretty awesome space. It was used for years, community. I've heard all sorts of stories, weddings, concerts, dinners, meetings. It meant a lot to people over the years. And so anyways, she came and saw the space upstairs, which is basically a big open hall with a small stage. And she would love to teach dance classes there. She'd like to move her studio there. So that's our first step in kind of bringing the building back to life. It really doesn't need that many changes. A lot of, like I said, my brother-in-law did a lot of the hard stuff. Anything we need to do, whether it be, some updated plumbing or electrical would obviously be permitted. We kind of measured around the building as far as parking spaces and things. I think that was kind of an important question. So like I said, he had graded around the building, so it's been scraped down, it's been hard packed, and I think it makes for some pretty great spacing. I did talk to the DOT on Friday. I had sent in an application because it's a change of use for the building, so they needed an updated application for the space. And they did agree that they would issue the permits, so those are on the way, and that was pretty exciting. So that's really our first step, is to get the upstairs ready for Melanie, if you guys are all right with that.
Heidi, I got a question.
Yes?
Does anybody occupy the building as we speak right now? Is there anybody in there?
Other than a friend of ours that stores some, sorry, hold on one second.
It's all right. Actually,
Stores some catering equipment.
Right.
And we've been in and out to kind of figure out what we're doing, but there's nobody there on a regular basis, no.
I'm just wondering, when I hear like building, no one occupying it really, is it structurally sound? Is there any leaky roofs or mold or anything, or is it in pretty good shape?
No, it's actually, so over the years, when my brother-in-law got it in 2012, it needed some love. It had been, it hadn't been arranged for quite a while, and so there was a kind of an antique business in there. There was a lot of stuff, and there was some deferred maintenance, shall we say. So when he got it, he had the roof replaced. That was one of the first things he did. He had the septic replaced. The structural building, I have been told, because we've had some contractors look at it, I've been told that it'll probably be here another 100 years. So,
When was it originally built?
it was built in the early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
You can ask now about if you have a conflict.
Yeah, and the blessing and the curse of it, I guess, is it was never heavily insulated or tight. So usually when you run into mold issues with a building that's been unoccupied, for a while, and there hasn't been any airflow, but it's got plenty of airflow. It's gonna get some insulation pretty soon.
Okay.
hey, Scott, this was just something Johnny asked me before the meeting, and if you want to go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just in full disclosure, Heidi and Mike, her husband, are my landlords, and they've been for a couple of years. I know Heidi, but usually I mail them my check every month, so I don't see her a lot. But I think based upon, I can just look at the application and be very impartial. I have no problem with just being extremely fair and open, but I just needed to divulge that, if that makes a difference.
Well, I'm not sure what the legal review of that would be, but as you do have a direct business relationship with them, and since we have a quorum without you, might be safer to not have you vote in this case.
Excuse me, is that Johnny that's saying that? I can't tell.
Yes,
Yes.
that was Johnny.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Max, you didn't have time, you just heard about this yourself as well?
Correct. I felt this was a decision that at least the planning board should discuss during at least before we get too far into the application. If this is something you want Johnny to be part of, or if you just want him to, or if you want to just make a decision a bit later on, he would just be, for the time being, a member of the audience at this point.
Well, there's no reason why he can't ask questions and be part of the discussion.
Okay.
It seems a little extreme. Whatever you think, Scott, you're the chair. But I would have no problem with Johnny weighing in and voting, given this not very, strong relationship.
Yeah. And it's not a direct or anything like that.
Scott, if I could.
Or any direct benefit.
Yeah, if I could, I'm very, and I think something like this is great for the community, a dance studio and all that. But I can be very impartial, and I really, like I said, I know Heidi, a little bit, but that nothing is going to weigh my decision. I'm going to look at this very openly and objectively, and make a a decision if I can. I'm not in any way swayed for or against just because I put her name on my check.
That's moving to any details here, are there any?
So I have a question.
Yeah, please.
I don't really remember what it's like along the road, and I'm really glad that you touched base, Heidi, with the DOT. But I think that when older Granges often had, when it first was built and people were gathering there and coming and going, there's a lot less traffic on 32 and lot slower traffic probably than 32. So with you having an exchange of, dancers coming in and leaving, coming and going, the way I kind of remember that, and I might be wrong, completely wrong, is that there's no real swale there. It's all kind of open. You can pull into the property anywhere along the road, right?
Yes, it is a wide open driveway.
Right. So my concern would be, when the changeover happens, 10 people, whatever, students coming, that there's too much broad use, people going left, people going right. So in other words, thinking about, it's actually not the job of the planning board to figure this out, but in terms of safety, focusing where people are coming in and out of the property.
Well, with that, I had a lovely conversation with the DOT. I enjoyed this conversation so much. And I know that sounds weird, but he has this amazing Irish accent, and I felt like I was speaking to a leprechaun. And I know that's probably politically incorrect, but it was just such a cool conversation. Anyways, yes. So
we're with you.
It was, I don't know, it was just this little bit of sunshine on a Friday. He was just fun to talk to. But so what he recommended was that yes, there be a dedicated entrance and exit, and if you're looking at that overview picture right now, basically kind of almost in the center to put like a flower bed or something like a U shape in there, so that you don't run into what you just said, and that it's going to have a dedicated entrance and a dedicated exit, so that you don't have people pulling in and out at the same time and potentially having issues. Okay. So that is the plan.
That would be good.
Yeah.
So it also looks like you're showing like a white area as kind of parking, but there's so much space in front of the building. Wouldn't people normally, is there parking available on the front?
There is. I kind of feel like if we're going to try to dedicate an entrance and an exit, there would potentially be directly in front of the building, which I think I sent a couple pictures Max might have of what parking could potentially look like.
Yep.
And because I know that right side of the building has been heavily reinforced they dug down and they graded it and they put in, I guess you call hard pack. But I know that it's not going to turn into a mud pit because it was made into a dedicated space for heavy traffic. So the building is about 70 feet long, and we kind of, an average parking space I think is 9 feet wide and about 18 feet long. So that potentially would give us 7 parking spaces on that side and maybe 1 or 2 more in the front. And then there could be more parking in the front, but I'd like to put the driveway entrance and exits in before I kind of say we can or can't do that.
Yep. Okay.
So the other thing about parking is And actually, I don't really know in rural village, since we're trying to encourage businesses, well, generally, you know, if you had 10 cars lined up, and you're basically on that photo, the rear bumper of the car, is that at the property line or is there more property?
There's more property line, there's kind of a swale there. So between, we took a couple different pictures on this side. And to be honest with you, it was a difference of opinion between my husband and I. Because in my world, I would pull or back into the building. But he was like, well, you could park over here too. And I'm like, well, you could, but then if you overstep your boundaries, you might end up, there's a bit of a swale there.
Like at the veterinary place, I always get scared on the back end of that one.
Yeah, so in my world, I would have the parking like nose or tail up towards the building.
So here's my question. So how much greenery and trees do you have? How much is still have trees in it that's your property? Because basically the idea is when people putting in a big bunch of parking that it's not necessarily attractive to a neighbor, a neighbor's properties, but if there's a buffer of some greenery.
There is a pretty good, I don't know the exact measurement and I'd be happy to go measure it for you, but between, I should have taken a better picture actually, but there's, I would have to say like maybe where that the swale kind of starts per se, there's at least 50 to 70 feet before there's any clearing for the house that's on to that right-hand side, because that's kind of the same. I mean, if I lived in a residential house, I don't really want to look at a parking lot either, so.
Well, it's not a question of how far it is to the neighboring house, it's to the property line. So do you know where your property line is there? Like on the drawing you did with the white, that's 18 feet, that's parking, but how much, so is it like another 20 feet to your property line?
It's, you know, I honestly, I can't say exactly. I would say it's at least 10 feet. We can, I should say.
Isn't that 18 feet from the property line to the?
Oh.
To the parking, the potential.
Yes, 18 feet.
And but you had drawn the white part also 18 feet, right? Because you were just saying 9 by 18 for.
Well, the white was just a suggestion. Yeah. So, but we figured out, typical parking space is about 18 feet.
So I think you need, if you're pulling your nose up and you're gonna back out and leave, I think you need about 40 feet. Okay. And then you either have a strip of greenery or try to come up with a, you know, I'm not sure it's a huge issue right now, because there's.
Well, I mean, the other option would be to have them pull in the front, because there's quite a lot of space along the front of the building. But
well, what's the rule on rural village about is screening parking maps? Is it the same as everywhere else, or?
Yes.
Okay, so sometimes it's a fence, sometimes it's you plant some additional arborvitaes or something.
Well, but right now it's already overgrown, it looks to me.
Well, the neighbors is, yeah.
No, on their property as well. The swale part has growth in it, according if you looking at the pictures. That way.
Well, I was unclear from that picture of, so at the bottom, so it's flat, the back of the car, and then it drops down, and that's your property line?
They're just beyond that swale. There's still some space between where that drops off and where our property line ends and the neighbor begin.
Okay.
So there's still some space beyond that.
So in other words, that 18 feet there's plant growth. That's basically.
Yeah, they're kind of where the white is. This is a little deceiving because it's an older picture. It's an older Google picture. But where the white is where you can see the driveway in the picture. So that would kind of be where cars could potentially park. And then there's some space beyond that, and then it has the swale, and that's all kind of overgrown trees. There's some mature trees, there's some bushes, and then the neighbor's line starts beyond that.
Mhm.
And there's actually even more on the other side, like there's more space on the other side, so if this were, and it just so happens that this was nice and clear, and so that's.
Right, well, it's made for cars.
Yeah,
but
there's more space on the other side as well.
Yeah, there's looks like a lot of space there.
Yeah.
So I think it's if that, you know, because that 18 feet is grown, it's already a you know, I think that's, doesn't that meet the requirements, Max, for an effective, you know?
Yeah, but the white part's not wide enough for a car, not the picture that showed that white blob should be drawn to, by scale, it's not wide enough, thick enough. It's a little deceiving, so it comes more to the property line than.
Right, right.
That's all, it's just closer, and then, the question is, how much is that greenery that's left over? And it's probably, it could be enough, but, I'm just bringing it up. Because if you make the ground floor active, which, you know, hopefully it will over time, then, you know, these are the kinds of things that you're gonna have to deal with.
Yeah, and there's actually quite a bit of space in the back as well, but we're not ready to go there yet.
Yeah.
We're gonna work with what we already have.
Yep, that makes
I
sense.
think that my, you know, frankly, my concern with that is sort of related to Barbara's in that backing, you know, if people are pulling in, and regardless of whether they're, you know, pulling in headlights to building or backing in, is the visibility of that swale.
Mm-hmm.
If there are classes at night and people are backing up and around,
Mm-hmm.
that swale is a good, you know, tree barrier, but it's just about the, you know, the distance available for the cars. So if that's dicey, you do have, looks like you do have a lot of other options.
Yeah, and well, we can also put reflectors or something there to make people more aware.
Yeah, or you know, something that they can, you know, or a bumper or something that they can.
Yeah. Keep them from going any further.
Yeah.
So that's my only concern about the project. It seems like it's a good fit for the neighborhood, and be a lot of fun to have that here. What is this? What is the dance studio? What is that called in our uses? What's it most like, Max?
So I would categorize it under private school, just because if you go to, and I have to pull it up. By the way, Jeff Erskine's on Zoom. If Susan, you needed time to just say when you got in. So if you go to page 15, 15-25, 1525, you'll find under commercial school, which I would call private school, an institution which is commercial or profit oriented. Examples thereof are dancing. I feel like kind of ends it right there. So I would categorize it as a private school.
Okay.
Max, what is the requirement for parking? Or the use that we're looking at, number of spaces?
For private school?
For this particular application, is there
I think there,
what is needed, what's appropriate?
So that's a bit more up to you guys, because it's kind of all over where you would categorize it. For example, would it be considered, just a minute ago. For example, when we get to school this is section 9.3.3.3.9. You can find it on page 9-14 or 9-15. For schools, they only have parking requirements for primary, secondary, and post-secondary schools. So that's speaking more about like the coastal Christian schools or Miller School, or not Miller School, or the Medonic schools. I don't think it would count the dance studio. Then again, there's also fitness centers because it's a very active group. Same thing with sports clubs. You know, you could categorize it into one of those, or you could just categorize it under other uses not listed.
I have a question, Max. Sorry. If, let's just looking ahead a little bit, say the bottom floor is also occupied by, I'm just going to say a restaurant, does that change the parking parameters if you have a separate entity come in, whereas you're just doing it for the dance studio right now?
It would change it, but that would be when Heidi or whoever's going to submit the application would come back to either myself and Stan or the planning board and say, hey, this is what we're thinking, and then we would apply the same standards.
Okay,
I don't know if Heidi has something already lined up, but this is more on the.
No, we definitely don't have something lined up. So far, we have some very cute dance classes. That's about it.
So
I think this might, I mean, this is as close to like a sports club as anything that you listed, Max, but other uses is okay as well.
I mean, if I could just give an example for just following Johnny's scenario of what if someone moves into the bottom floor. Let's say it's a cafe and deli. This was a new use. It's like a small restaurant type thing. That's something where Stan and I would review it instead of the planning board. But because we know about this instance, the parking and the surrounding area, we would actually send it back to the planning board because we feel the traffic would be a bigger issue than something that we think should have some public hearing to it. And you can also make that a condition that if the bottom floor does get leased out to someone else, then it comes back to the planning board to address parking.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
I'm still also really uncomfortable with the parking situation, just more than anything else, because it's not really completely thought out. I mean, you know, you can't put some parking on the side, but it still needs some planning and some development and what kind of improvements to make it usable and not dangerous. You can't really use the left side of the building because you can't park on top of the septic tank. I mean, there's some, but you can't go back too far. So there's a limited access on the left-hand side of the building. You don't want to, as I recall, the septic field is elevated. They built up the top of it when they put it in a few years ago.
Yeah, it's actually behind, they put up large rocks as a barrier over that. You couldn't park there anyways.
So I'd like to actually request a more drawn to scale parking plan and traffic flow as part of the building permit, just to make sure that there is a well-conceived plan before it goes forward.
Okay, so I have a kind of inexperienced question. Who does one talk to about planning a parking lot? I don't know.
It's too bad, I probably can't do it for them, right, Scott? I mean, I could do it, but I can't do it since I'm on the board, right?
You couldn't do it and then be part of
vote on it?
part of voting on it.
No. Something to think about. And then I'm trying to think off the top of my head who else could do one for you, Heidi.
Yeah.
Can Max do it?
Does Chuck do those kinds of things?
Oh, probably he could do it.
So just out of curiosity, when we're talking about having the plan redone, are you saying like a full engineering plan or something similar to this, but it just shows the exact measurements for a parking lot built out right here, and how far it'll be from the septic. How detailed are we speaking of?
Well, some of the parking could still be on that side where the white is, it's just not that clear. I think that's what Barbara's saying, it's
I
not,
would like to know
it
the
doesn't show spaces and the full dimensions of, you know.
the dimension from the building to that side lot line. I mean, that would be super helpful to just know.
Well, I think you need that and to the swale, because you can't drive a car
Right.
down into the swale as part of parking. That's, and then, you know, for the applicant, Heidi, that's, I think, what is bothering us is, you know, there's sort of room there, but it's kind of narrow. It doesn't look like it would meet the normal, like pulling in and then backing out and around amount of distance.
So I know this isn't an exact measurement, but I can tell you that a Jeep Cherokee Laredo is 18 feet long, which is what was in that picture. And we had it parked nose to tail from the building. So I know there's at least from the building to that area and then some is probably about 40 feet. I don't know if that is an exact measurement.
40 feet.
From the edge of the building to probably the edge of the
Edge of the swale?
yeah, like where that is.
Yeah.
That's like 2 Jeep Cherokees long,
Yep.
but plus
Right.
a couple feet.
I guess the
And
issue
our
would be,
property line is some way past the swale.
right, but if you had a row of Jeep Cherokees parked there,
Right.
that, you know, right next to each other,
Mm-hmm.
it looks like it would take a 20-point turn to, you know, that's really the issue. And if you pull it in at an angle, you could have the parking spaces angled, but then need a way for people to turn around. So they have to go around the back of the building. There has to be some other way to do it. That's really the issue. Because the normal standards for providing enough spaces. So the other way to do it would be if you delineate spaces that are parallel, you could get maybe 5 cars parked parallel to the building.
Mm-hmm.
And people could parallel park along with spaces on the other side or in front. But I think that's maybe what, and I'm not trying to speak for Jim and Barbara, but I think those are the kinds of things that we're looking to see if there's a way you can map it out that would make it seem reasonable.
Yeah, and even if you went parallel, you've got the problem getting in and getting back out again.
Yeah,
It's not really set up, it's not wide enough for really two-way traffic.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about the safety of the kids. When you get people dropping off and picking up in pretty close proximity, so you get cars coming in, cars coming out, and it's really not set up yet for that type of traffic flow and traffic exchange.
Yeah.
It seems
I think
as
it's
though-
doable, it just needs more
Yeah.
thought.
Right, it just,
Just a
and
little
if
bit
you've got
more
enough,
information.
what's that?
Just a little bit more information to
Yeah,
make sure it's gonna work.
yeah. So you've got the permits on the way, and I think if you're going to make a dedicated entrance and exit, that would be great if you could do that as part of the overall conception of what the parking would be like, and figure out, have a plan for a certain number of spaces that you think are going to be necessary, and just have it drawn out a little better. That would be very helpful.
Okay.
Might get some help from some of the folks around that do site prep work.
Okay, so what, I know it sounds stupid, but like, if I were to like go to the phone book or go to Google, what am I looking for? Like parking lot preparation, or like who plans out a parking lot per se?
Yeah, it's a design thing.
Yeah.
People wing it all the time. I'm sure an asphalt guy could wing it, but you could check with Chuck Campbell if he would do it.
Yeah, because you're not asking for a full engineering map drawing, I don't think.
Right.
But you do need some dimensions and a kind of a plan of how the traffic flow and the parking, the space available for parking and turning.
Yeah, something to scale that works.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that once you lay it out and you start moving parking, maybe some of it on the other side that you're gonna have to, I'm just thinking, instead of a separate in and out, you might have to have the same opening, with in and out in the same opening, just because of the circulation, but, because you also have, the entry ramp kind of sticks out quite a ways from the front of the building, right, to get in?
There's still a pretty good amount of space between that entryway and the curb or the highway, whatever you want to call it.
Right, yeah. No, I just mean access to it, getting to it.
Yeah.
It can be done,
And you have a lot of space, it's just a little bit tight on that side.
Okay.
just have people with smaller cars come.
Yeah, we love Volkswagen bugs.
No problem if you drive a Prius, other than that.
Heidi, when are you looking to get this whole project going?
She would like to start June 1st. So, yeah, I quite honestly, having never done this before, when I called Max, he's like, oh, okay, so we'll get a plan for the planning board. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know what that means, but sure. So we're, a little bit winging it, but, I completely understand, safety is important, and that was actually one of the things, in that particular zone, it's supposed to be 30 miles an hour, and, whether it is or not, but the guy from DOT was like, yeah, when that was built, there were probably still some horse and buggies on the road, so we're different.
Yeah.
Like, so, yes, we'll issue you permits, and this is what I'd like you to do, and so, no problem.
But it's fairly open. The sight lines are pretty good by that. It's not bad. You're not like on a sharp corner or, limited visibility or something. It's.
Yeah, you kind of see it coming up, and we'll clear a little bit more by the road, just to, I want it.
Southbound, northbound is a little problematic, but southbound is.
Yeah, southbound is very clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the name of the building, Heidi? Does it have a name?
It did, but it was the Progressive Grange. That was its name, and.
Are you gonna have a name?
Well, I don't know. It's been a family thing because my brother-in-law is, obviously was an uncle to my kids, and my husband's uncle passed away and left us some money that lets us actually do this. So somehow it has to have them in it. We haven't figured that part out yet, but so I don't know, maybe we'll name it Uncle's Place.
Heidi, are they classes for children or adults?
They do both, actually. She's mostly kids. It's, her, everything from...
Are they during the day or at night?
They're like after school. So, and I think maybe her latest classes, they're kind of like school mom hours, so I think maybe from 3 o'clock to maybe 7 o'clock.
Okay. And there's lighting around the building for...
There is. There's already lighting on the front 2 corners, and we were actually going to put some on the back 2 corners for safety reasons and just, to keep the building and people coming in and out and just everybody be safer.
And if they're big lights, they'll be pointing down so they don't...
Yes, they definitely. We do not want to tick off the neighbors.
The building already has a couple of bathrooms, or?
It does. They have seen better days, but we actually have a plumber and electrician coming this Saturday to look at things. So anything we do would be through permits. But the septic is new, so that's the good.
And the roof.
And the roof.
The roof.
Yeah, and the supports underneath it. Actually, J.D. Howell, Josh and Barrow, and so he came and he was the one who's like, this building will be around longer than we will.
Right, well, it's nice to see that it'll be put to some good use.
Yeah.
So, please, good luck with drawing out that plan. Go ahead, Max.
Yeah, if I could just jump in, I just need some clarity for this, just because.
Yes.
So you just want a more detailed plan. I guess what I'm curious about is, do you want a plan that's like as detailed as what the Controversy Lane Solar Farm was last month? Or
No.
something similar to what the coffee can was like, where it's got this ArcGIS look and it just has the specific measurements on it for just how wide it is, how long it is? Like, is that?
Well, and I think it should show, if I'm catching what we've been talking about, it should show the spaces where the parking would be and the distances available for turnaround and that kind of a thing.
All right, so.
Is that fair, Barbara and Jim and Sarah?
And we're in the location of the entrance off the road.
Yeah, I would include the entrance and exit plan for the access that you talked to DOT about.
Okay.
What your plan is in that, because that would obviously affect where you could put spaces, and when you do that, you may find you've got lots of ways to put spaces on there. It's just in thinking that all out and drawing it may give you good options for the parking that you want. So I think having those together both would be important.
Okay. Your thoughts? Is that accurate?
Then remember the Madomic vet?
Yes.
Yes.
They were asking for more parking in the back. They had a full parking plan. They showed all the spaces, the turning radiuses, where the new parking was gonna go. It's that type of thing. It's not that detailed, but it has enough information that you can see what's gonna happen.
All right, in that case, Heidi, I can actually, that actually is something that I can help you with as part of your site plan application.
Okay. Well, I
Max.
Okay.
I just
Great.
Yeah, I just need the measurements and everything.
Yeah, excellent.
So
Okay.
there just needs to be a formal vote that this is being tabled to, I assume, March.
Well, that would be the soonest, and we'd be happy to get back at it right away if you have the time to be able to do that. We'd be happy. We know we're holding you up as it is, so.
we'll make it happen.
So, could I have a motion to table this application until the applicant returns with a parking plan?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor signify aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Who was the seconder, please?
Barbara.
Barbara, thank you. Jim and Barbara. No one not opposed.
Oh, it's very exciting. I'm happy this is happening. It's great.
Great to see the building being used again.
Yeah, I think it's a nice addition to Waldeboro. As a dance mom, I'm happy about it.
Good.
Driving to Newcastle and near Moscata.
Great.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for coming and,
So Heidi, I'll reach out to you tomorrow about just getting this onto the March agenda.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Have a good
Great.
night.
Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
thank you.
Good luck.
You too. So Max, if you can you take that,
Yep.
because that is taking up my whole screen and I can't go back to the bottom. There we go.
Oh, Jeff's here.
Hello there.
When did you get here, Jeff?
He got here when you guys were asking about what this would be considered as, and I said it was a private school. I think I was looking through it and I said, there's Jeff.
15 minutes late or so.
Okay, so, we have no pre-applications, so, Max, you've got some housekeeping items, but I would like to do the meeting minutes that we postponed from the, beginning of the meeting.
Yep.
And we have the minutes of the October 14th, meeting, and we have the minutes of the last meeting in January. October. Yes.
Was I there?
Yes, you were. Then we didn't have a November, I don't think we had November and December. And
No.
then, January was quite a long meeting, because, we didn't get to review those meeting minutes in the January meeting. That's the one you missed, Barbara, was January last month.
I think so.
So has everyone had a chance, are we prepared to move on these meeting minutes?
I've glanced through them, not seen anything substantial.
Yeah, I read through them. I prepped for last month's meeting, hoping we would get to do this, and they look fine to me.
Are you looking January's now or October?
We're looking October 1st, the October meeting, October 14th. Johnny was there, Sarah was there, Jim was there, Jeff, we were all there, actually. It was the for those that are just, it was the pre-application for the solar, controversy in solar panel. And then that was Jeffrey's first meeting.
I don't see any issues with it. So I vote to approve the minutes as written.
Got a motion?
That's a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments or further changes? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Okay, those are approved. And in January, we were all there except for Barbara. Has everybody had a chance to look at those minutes? It's quite a long one.
It was a long one.
I watched the video the next day. You guys did a good job.
Thank you. We could have used you though. It would have helped.
Well, that
I did have a couple suggestions, but oh well. Water under the dam.
Yes.
That reminds me, how's the audio for this meeting? Is it good?
What's that?
How's the audio for the, well, I guess that answers my question. I was asking how's the audio for this meeting is today.
Today?
Max.
So it's much better that we can hear you and Johnny, we can hear better at the table than before.
Perfect, so it worked.
Thank you very much.
I thought it was hard to hear Max tonight.
Well, that's because now I'm right next to a mic that has a speaker, but at the beginning, I was just standing right up there, right in front of a camera.
Oh, okay.
So you're either visibly very far away or we can't hear you.
Exactly, the way I like it.
That's perfect. One or the other. Is everyone comfortable approving these minutes? Any changes or comments? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
Gillis's turn. I'll make the motion.
Okay, is there a second? Is there a second?
Second it.
Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes of January 20th. All in favor, signify aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Barbara abstaining since she wasn't there.
Yep.
That's organized. Okay.
Could we, I'm just curious,
Yeah,
should we make a permanent change to the agenda to always put the minutes towards the tail end, so we don't always have to juggle it?
I would love that. I suggested that before. Max, can you just
Yep.
do that?
Yeah, I think I did that in a previous meeting, and then I think someone wanted to change it.
You reverted to your old format when you. I presume you have a template that you go to when you set these up, and you're.
I do agendas for a lot of committees.
Yep, that would be helpful, because I don't think we need the applicants and citizenry they can certainly stay and listen to us talk about our meeting minutes, but I prefer to leave those.
Right.
So I did want to mention one thing before I open it up for any other comments from board members, and if Max has anything, just, I did send an email out about Ted Wooster that, unfortunately he won't be able to be back to be a member of the planning board. So we are looking for a replacement to fill his slot. So if you know of anybody who might be good for the board, let Max and Julie know, and we can, or just try to strong arm somebody to get in touch with them. And I did also want to, since it isn't a late meeting yet, and hopefully it won't be, since we have a new member, and both and the meetings that we've had since Jeff joined have been really long, and we haven't had time to go through giving him a chance to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself. I will, usually when I do this, Jeff, we've done this as a board, is have the board members tell you a little bit about themselves too. So you're not the only one on the hot seat of going through your background briefly, and that way you get to know us a little bit as well. So if Jim and Sarah and Barbara and Johnny would indulge me, I'd like to have everyone just spend a minute or two telling a little bit about themselves. So since I'm going to ask everybody to do that before we turn to Jeff, I will start off. I've been full-time in Waldoboro since 2015, when my wife and I retired. And we've been part-timers since 2002. So we were just vacationers until 2015. I worked in research and development, worked for a materials company, did a lot of overseas travel, mostly to Japan. And my wife and I have sort of started a berry farm in our retirement. As a retirement project, it's turned into much more work than we anticipated, growing elderberry and aronia and raspberries. But it keeps us outdoors and busy, which has been kind of nice in the pandemic to have stuff to do outdoors, and so we don't feel too isolated. Anyway, so that's my 2-minute summary. Anybody else want to go? Anybody want to go next, Jim?
Sure. So almost a similar story. Susie and I bought our place here in the land in 2000 and have been on a building spree ever since. I hope we're done. Retired in 17. My background is in heavy industrial construction. Lived and worked around the world, including in Texas, which I consider to be another foreign country. Married my high school sweetheart, 2 kids, 6 great grandkids. Spent a lot of time on the water and tended to my 4 acres of woods. Great time now, this time of year, for big bonfires, and that's become our local social event. Tell the folks I'm having a brush burn at 4 o'clock and they all show up. So, lots of fun.
Who's next?
I'll go. So I've lived in Waldoboro since 2000. I have a design background. I'm a farmer as well. I grow some different organic fruits and saffron. But I do you know, I mostly have a design business going. That's the thing that makes the money, not the farming. And I am heavily involved in the Waldo Theater renovation, and yeah, I guess that's about it. And my husband is a painter and artist in town. I mean, if you look at artwork in town, you might have seen some of this stuff. Or in Maine. But yep, that's it.
Thank you. Donnie?
Yes, I am a Portland native. I came up to Waldoboro in 2015. While in Portland, I owned a business. I owned a fitness club. I'm an ex-Marine. I've been to 34 different countries, 40 states, and 8 provinces. I am a 2-time world powerlifting champion, and I've just finished my 7th book.
Cool. What are you doing in your spare time, Johnny?
I try to jog, but my feet are so cold now. It's horrible.
Okay, Sarah.
I moved to Waldoboro in 2002 from Portland. And I am a professional hand weaver. Mostly I weave rugs, and I've supported myself at that since about 1985. And live here and do a lot of gardening besides that, and am moderately successful at staying out of trouble.
Yes.
Okay, Jeff, now to you.
Oh, Max.
All right.
Oh, Max, yeah.
Yeah, Max.
Hi, I'm Max Johnstone. I'm the planner. I've been here since 2007, I think it was the summer of 2017, and they haven't fired me yet, so I must be doing something right. That's it.
Where'd you go, Jeff?
Oh,
All right,
there he is.
sounds good. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, so I'm kind of from here, lived in this area since I was about 5. Went to Madomet and started doing painting and building houses, and I've been building for since the late 90s, mid to late 90s, and bought a house here in Waldoboro in 2003 on Depot Street, and I've lived here on and off since then, and so I've got one son, and my wife has 2 kids. She's a massage therapist, and she's a long-term, she's a old school Mainer, if you will. Her family's been from Friendship for 260 years or something like that. So I haven't been here that long. The Erskines have been here since came to Bristol in 1752. But my parents are sometimes from away. My mom was born in New Jersey, and my father was born in New York State, and so was I. But my mom's family has been here forever, and so has everyone else's. But I'm not a Mainer, so not technically. But
Yeah.
not that matters for much, especially in this crowd.
Yeah, not so much anymore either. In the old days, it was more of a different set. No, I'm from away. I was born in Massachusetts and raised there. But my father's parents were both from Dixmont area. It was actually Simpson's Corner, part of Dixmont, and they go back, 150 years back there. But that's all been the connections sort of got lost. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, this was Massachusetts until 1820, so.
That's right, it was. Yep. Yeah, we managed to make ourselves a burden so that they gave us up.
Right. I'm sure that's how it went. Well, I appreciate you guys having me aboard and giving me a bit of an introduction yourselves too. Kind of nice to know who I'm working with, and I'll be very happy to hear input from you guys on what I'm supposed to do, how I can be of help, and I've got a ton to learn. Then there's I guess there's on the 20th or 24th, there's a seminar I'll be doing to give me a little starter. So I'm excited about that.
Helpful. Yeah, that'd be very helpful. And then, yeah, other than just sort of going through the land, it's really about the land use ordinance and becoming as familiar as you can with it. It's not the easiest language to work through, but, you know, we do our best. You know, we have had a number of tasks over the, you know, since I've joined, of rewriting parts of the land use ordinance to bring them, up to the state requirements. But it can be challenging. But that's our purview is really, most, you know, people ask, you know, oh, you're on the planning board, what are you planning for the town? And well, we don't plan anything, we just
react.
React to the applications, and we need to make sure that anything we approve meets the requirements of the land use ordinance. You know, it doesn't matter what the specifics of the business matters on how it fits into the land use ordinance, but whether there's 10 other businesses that are the same in town, or how their business plans, those kinds of things we might be curious about, but that's not our purview. Our purview is trying to make sure that it meets the requirements of the land use ordinance, and we're allowed to help people through that, but ultimately it's the applicant's responsibility with our guidance to bring their application into conformity with the land use ordinance. So I'm glad you're taking that class. That should help. And don't be afraid to ask questions, because all of us have plenty to learn too. So any questions are really helpful to hear somebody else's perspective, because that's why there's supposed to be 7 of us on the board, is because it takes a bunch of set of eyes and brains to see it through. Barbara, you were going to say something?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say, it really takes about 1.5 years to get the hang of it, Jim, so don't worry about it if it comes slow. I think it almost takes 2 years of being on the board to get comfortable with these things, because it's such a variety that gets thrown at you.
Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to say, if I could, Scott, since I had the opportunity of watching the last January's meeting, I actually watched the video I think it was the next day or the 2 days after. So it was interesting for me, because I could step back and see what the process was like. And what I did notice, and it made me uncomfortable, and I just think we should have a policy about this. And I know that the meeting was really long and people were tired and you're running out of time, but I think that when a board member doesn't approve a project, I think it would be better for everybody if they stated the reasons for not approving, not going into a big elaborate thing or a big speech, but just stating what the reasons are for rejecting whatever it is, not approving a project. Because otherwise it kind of feels like, it might be something personal, or, you're left with, an observer is just kind of left with this uncomfortable feeling like, oh, I wonder why.
So actually, that was one of the housekeeping items I was going to bring up.
I agree with you, Barbara. I think it should be, I think the applicant and the public and the rest of the board has a right to know what the rationale behind a refusal is.
So I was actually going to jump in on housekeeping items, because that's actually something I was going to bring up. It should be sort of a standard practice, and I think it's just kind of faded away just because we haven't had too many instances where this has happened. But correct, whenever someone does abstain or simply say no to an application, they do need to provide, or they do need to state the reason. For example, last meeting, we did have 2 instances. One was Johnny rejecting the solar farm application, and then one was Sarah abstaining for the shipping container application. In both instances, there should have been a reference for why that was the case. Johnny, I think after the meeting, you did tell me that you were voting no because you wanted at least a site walk of the place.
Yeah.
But, well, I'm sorry, I'll just get to the point and then all that be done. And Sarah, I think you abstained because you were unsure about the planning board voting on something when you thought there was a mixture of interpretation, correct? For the coffee can.
Yeah, that's not exactly my thought at the time, and I'd be happy to explain it now if you want me to.
Yeah, and so what I was going to say is, just for the record, I think it would be appreciated, at least for the minutes, if both Johnny could state his reason for rejection, and if Sarah could state the abstention, just because we do have a bit of time. So, Sarah, if you want to go ahead with abstaining first.
Sure. I hoped I made it clear at the meeting that I liked the project. I didn't mean to vote against the project. I felt uncomfortable with, it seemed like the discussion about the definition of the use of a storage container was not real complete. And I couldn't really articulate that at the time, but in retrospect, I realized that it was just that, Max, you had put it on the agenda that we should regard the use of a shipping container in the commercial district as a retail space vis-a-vis what the land use ordinance basically didn't say. And it's not that I'm opposed to that use. I just wasn't sure that we had really fleshed it out at the meeting.
No, and
also, it may also be that I couldn't hear what we said enough, because I really couldn't hear a whole lot of any of the comments that came out of the town office I couldn't hear.
No, and I understand. That's why I was saying.
Yeah, I will have to say that on your, to me, I clearly understood your abstaining, Sarah, as being uncomfortable with whether the definition of the storage container applied or not. But right. you weren't against the use, and so you didn't want to vote no.
Right.
And I think that my feeling and what I caught from the rest of the board members in our discussion about the storage container is that a number of us felt comfortable with it in being used because it wasn't used for storage. All the discussion that went on there, and that there were enough of us that were comfortable that it would pass, and I didn't get the feeling that you wanted to stop that from happening. You just didn't want to vote yes or no. So I think your abstention was relatively clear, and I think it was reasonable. You still had an interpretation of that, or weren't sure about it. If you weren't sure about it, I mean, I think you did the right thing. And if there had been more confusion among the rest of the board, we would have postponed it or done something else to review it. But I didn't think that was necessary because I think there was enough support for it. So, with that, I didn't want to leave you just hanging on your abstention. But anyway, I felt like I understood your rationale at the time. So I didn't think either that the applicant was particularly. I think that I felt like there was a good chance the applicant understood that as well, and we're happy to get it approved. So anyway.
So
good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
My understanding too. That's the distinct impression I came away with. Yep. Just weren't comfortable with the definition and the redefinition of the shipping container. Yep. And I'm looking at the minutes that we just approved, and it explains why Johnny.
Yeah. So hold on. I don't want us to go too far into this. So Sarah did hers, and now Johnny, can you explain your vote?
Well, first of all, I just want to say I'm for solar power, but I thought I needed a site walk to. There were so many conditions, and there were so many people giving various interpretations. There was this situation about the road, who was liable. There were small kids running around. So there was just too many things up in the air, and I couldn't, in good conscience, just say yes. I asked the people about the solar panels, where they came. Now, they should know where they're getting the solar panels, and the gentleman, if you look at the minutes, said, oh, well, I don't know. And I asked about a carbon footprint. So there were just some things that I just didn't feel they were, giving me an answer where I could make a good decision. And again, I'm for solar power, but there was just too much. I was uncomfortable with several of some of the people who were in the neighborhood. That one lady who said, yeah, there's a lot of kids there. Who's liable for that road? I mean, there was just too many balls up in the air. So I just didn't feel I should go ahead and say yes when I just felt there was a lot of unanswered, at least in my interpretation, questions that I just didn't feel good about.
So, Scott, do you mind if I just quickly go over that for a moment?
You can start on it. I think there's a lot to unpack there.
So,
I'm not sure how much detail we want to go into, but go ahead.
So, I do understand that there were some people at the neighborhood who were concerned about the project. I've had a call from one or two people after the application asking questions about, is this being forced on? And I said, no, the conditions clearly kind of lay everything out. The logistics plan, the fixing of the road maintenance, all of that is something that they do have to address before even getting a building permit. So what I'll say on the difference between a board member abstaining and a board member voting to, I'm just going to say reject an application. In Sarah's case, it was very clear that it was a question of the interpretation. It was believed that a board member believed that more information was needed. Johnny, and I think that's what you should have done in this case. You should have abstained in that case, because when you're voting to reject an application, what you should do is cite in the ordinance why it needs to be refused. Right. Because in that application instance, had one other member chose to abstain or reject the application, it would have failed at that point. And I think other than Jeff, everyone here was involved when East Ridge Mobile Home Park came for an application and that was rejected. And when an application is rejected, you have to sort of explain why it is being rejected so that the applicant can potentially come back, correct the actions, and the planning board can look at it in a new light. So for example, and I'm honestly just trying to think of a good one. Like, for example, there was one that was brought up. So Jeff, Johnny, in your case, I think you wanted to cite 3.6.11, proposal will provide for safe and adequate vehicle and pedestrian access and circulation into development. I think that's what you're trying to point to. If you do need to cite that during the public meeting, because if you don't, it does run the risk of the board getting caught into legal action. Right. So obviously members can say no to an application, but you do need to cite why in the ordinance it should be rejected.
Yeah.
So have I done a good job rounding it up, Scott, or did you or anyone have any other thoughts?
I guess I just had a couple other things to add to that, because I think that one of the issues was that Johnny, you said that who was liable for the road,
right?
And the road is a private road, and right now I think that was answered in the meeting. There's one guy who owns that road, and if they form a road association, everybody's got to own that a road association would be responsible for the road.
Right.
But again, the legal liability of that road, I'm not sure is our purview. I guess I'm a little disturbed about your rationale that using the solar panel source that the guy didn't know the answer and he should know, a large company that these people that are making this presentation are involved in this part of the work in a company like that. I think it's a very unfair assumption to accuse the guy of not being completely forthright when he's saying that he didn't know where the solar panels were sourced.
Right.
Maybe.
Well, I wasn't accusing him, Scott, of not being forthright. I just thought he should know. That's all.
Just earlier said here that it made you uncomfortable that he should have known the answer to where his solar panels came from. And to tell you the truth, it's none of our business where they get their solar panels. It's whether it meets the land use ordinance or not. Because you also asked how they were going to be profitable and how they were going to make money, which again is not our purview.
It's interesting, but it's not our job to.
Right. It's immaterial.
Well, and I'll add in, it's been glossed, and I'll add in, it was a pretty packed meeting, like 2.5 hours was just for this one application. I can understand it if it was like tonight, where no one's here, it's just going to be us and the applicant, and if they say it before we ask the question, then it's kind of fair game. But that's
the only other point I would like to make is that I understand that Johnny, you've many times mentioned the interest in having a sidewalk. I don't think it was right because I checked my notes and I looked back on the minutes of the October meeting when Sincarfa gave their pre-application, and there was no mention or question or discussion of doing a sidewalk. And then they come back with the full application in January, and we're going to delay them by asking for a sidewalk when we had the opportunity to do that in October. I didn't think was a good thing to, I just didn't think it was fair to the applicant.
Well, they're going to be coming back, and, I can certainly look at these items, and we'll have another chance when they come back, correct? My
understanding is they will be submitting a logistics plan that we'll review, but that before they get a building permit, but there's no requirement that they show up or that we have a meeting. We're just going to review the logistics plan and make sure it meets our expectations.
Will we be voting on the logistics plan?
I believe we will. That's the way we set it up.
So
you also have to be, and Max, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you took me to task on this a little while ago, real careful with site visit. If one or two of us want to go out and informally acquaint ourselves with the surroundings so we can be intelligent, that's fine. But as soon as you call for a formal site visit, then that becomes a public meeting. There's a whole set of things you have to do. Is that correct?
Right. So if for site walk, and I'll just say the quick point before I get into that. So Johnny, in this case, if you wanted a site walk, you should have abstained in that case and said, I abstain because I believe we need a site walk. But now going on to Jim's point, a site visit is treated very similar to an actual planning board meeting. I have to put in at least, I have to put ads in the paper. I have to send out notices to the neighbors. I have to put out a notice here at the town office. It has to be as public as these meetings are. Obviously, it's not going to be recorded unless anyone wants to give me a camcorder that day. But it's handled like that, and it's more of you walking the site, you being given the tour, and certainly people can ask questions, but someone will have to be there to record minutes and follow it. Now, as what you were just saying, Jim, about one or two people just going to a site, let's take the Grange or 931 Winslows Mills, for example. If someone, after this meeting, decides to drive over there and just take a look at the building, I can't stop someone from doing that. And you would likely just say it at this meeting. I took a quick little drive up there. This is what I saw. It's all right. But even if it's just 3 people casually meeting there at, for some reason, the same exact time, unplanned, you can't really do that. Someone needs to leave at that point.
Yeah, I think that, and, you know, the main, I think that is the logistics and issues with site visits are such that's, I think, part of the reasoning and rationale behind requiring site maps that require enough detail. Like even this application today, we're not asking for anything complicated, but we're asking for more dimensions and detail in a site map than was provided. And a lot of that is precisely to not have to require delaying an applicant or requiring a site visit public meeting. It's only when we really can't resolve those issues through prints. And in the case, certainly in the case of both of the solar panel installations, the site plans were very extensive and professionally done and provided, you know, huge amounts of information about the site that at least for me was perfectly adequate to understand the scale and scope of the project and what was going on at the site. So I think Jim's point is I agree with in terms of the potential issues with site visits. So it doesn't mean we don't do. We have, let's see, how many site visits have we done since I remember one.
Not very many.
Very often. No, not very many. We tried it. I mean, if we need to do them, we should do them. But for the most part, most of the board members have been comfortable. And in some cases, we've asked for more detail on the drawings as a substitute for that.
Kind of torture.
Yeah.
I've been in a couple, and they're not. You know, you can't really. If you're going to say something, you have to say it to everybody. Then if there's 10 people there, so you can't like chat about it to somebody next to you. And everything has to be super public, and it's not a. It's you know, it's kind of a strange experience.
Well, in this one, we're relying on Max for the most part to make sure that the applicant's providing sufficient detailed plans and maps to give us what we need. Or, you know, if there is a case where we need a site visit, we really need to make that clear as early on as possible, so we're not creating an obstacle. Okay. Is there anything? Did you have anything else, Max?
Just going through as fast as I can. I mean, Jeff already brought it up, but yes, February 24th. Maine Municipal Association is holding a webinar for planning boards and Board of Appeals people throughout the state, just as a little run-through course so people get to know what it's all about and learn the basics. It's a good class. I encourage anyone who's never taken it to take it. And just as a reminder, because you are planning board members for the town of Waldoboro, if you tell me you want to be on it, I will sign you up, and your $45 fee is waived. The town's paying for it. It's all in the budget. It's all good. So, Jeff, I'm getting you signed up tomorrow, and then if anyone else wants to join in, just feel free to message me, and I can do that. Then the third thing is, I sent an email about it, but LD 32, that's a piece of legislation going through the state Senate right now, I think. That would allow us to make Zoom meetings a permanent fixture. That means planning board members, select board members, pretty much town committee members are allowed to participate via Zoom or some type of remote software or a phone if they want. I highly encourage people to give their thoughts to their local representative or senator on this, because as I've said in the past, what allows us to legally do this right now is an executive order done by Governor Mills. When that executive order is done, and if there's no legislation on the books, we kind of we legally should be coming back to these meeting halls. So if LD 32 passes, Town of Waldoboro can adopt a policy that simply says planning board members can attend via Zoom. And I think part of it also says that votes need to be done by roll call votes, which I'm all in favor of. But I think that's all I had for 32. I'm sorry, I forgot. There was supposed to be public comment period on February 2nd, but it snowed that day, so they had to cancel it. And so the public comment period was moved to another time, but I can give people an update when that happens if they want to provide their thoughts.
Please. I was just thinking to myself that if the Zoom becomes permanent, then we'll never get a snow day from so we'll have no excuse to not have to hold them.
Well,
it'll be a great option even when we can get back to getting everybody packed in. It's a nice option. It'll be a nice option to have. I think it'd be a good thing if that passes myself.
Well, Scott, on that thought of snow days, at least last week, what the policy for the town office has always been, if the town office is closed, the meetings are canceled as well. So.
Oh yeah, sure.
So.
Okay. Yep. Good reminder.
I mean, we'll see what the town of Waldoboro would have to adopt their own policy first, but.
Well, you would have trouble. You would have to get to that doesn't make sense, because you would have to get to the office to really have the equipment going to record everything properly anyway, right?
I mean, I could have it from home, but I also don't want to do it from home.
We'll keep with the same rules then.
But all that's in the future. And I'm trying to think if there was anything else. Oh, right. I have the updated maps from Sincarfa Solar and the Coffee Can LLC that have the conditions listed on it. So after the meeting, if people are fine with it, I'll drive around, pick up signatures from people, and then I can mail it off to people, and I can mail it off to the applicants. Does anyone have an issue if I drive around tonight?
Whose house do you go to first?
Well, I don't have to go to Johnny's house at this point because he's here, and I don't have to go to Jeff because I got his signature.
I was just thinking if somebody had a card, a blank card, we could all say something to Ted. We have to sign it. Sign a card for Ted and then send it off. But
that's a good idea, though. We should do that.
Yeah.
To answer your question of where I go first,
I've got Plan B to save Max all the driving around. Why don't we all stop into the office to sign and sign a card at the same time?
My path is that I go down Friendship Road first to get Sarah, just because she's the only one down there, and then also so I can go to Flippers, and then I go get, well, I can skip Johnny at this point, but then I go down, get Scott and Jim, and then I would go get Barbara last, just because then I can easily transition onto Route 1 from there.
Yeah, you're talking.
Where's Jeff?
Jeff's on Depot Street, but I don't have to go to him tonight because I already got his signatures.
I still like going to the office and signing myself. I'm not going to be up too much longer. I moved 900 board feet of 1.5 inch thick oak this week, so I'm not.
All right.
I'm not.
We just sign tomorrow morning.
Yeah, if people want to come to the town office anytime tomorrow morning, I'll leave it. I'll give it to Marcus or whoever's going to be at the front desk. Just say, I'm here to sign the document that Max needs us to sign, and they'll point it to you.
Okay, that'd be great.
It doesn't open until 9, right?
Correct.
Okay, late morning for me.
So I can do that too.
On my Scott.
Yep, that works.
Great.
All right.
We have a card for Ted to sign.
Well, I can be there at 9 and drop something off.
Oh, great. I'd have to look through my desk drawer to see, but if you've got something, Barbara, that would be wonderful.
So in addition to the card, there's 3 documents that'll be signed. One is the Coffee Can LLC application, and then there are 2 maps for the solar farm. And because one of them I'm gonna mail off.
Okay.
And I think the last housekeeping item I can think of is back in September when this board was looking at the land use committee, there was talks of looking at the shoreland ordinance again for the definition of commercial fisheries and maritime activities. Is that something that this board would still like to explore? Because I think, because during that public hearing, there was concern about, I think it was mostly Dutch Neck Marine Park being a commercial fishery and what that meant, what uses would be allowed there. And so I don't know if that was a topic that this board still wanted to review, or if they wanted to, or if they looked it over since then and have said, we don't really need to do it anymore.
What would happen if we wanted to change it? We'd have to get it on the June warrant?
It would go on the June warrant. It'll probably be November, considering March is probably going to already have, since March is going to have the Winslows Mills application, potentially another one.
I remember that was very rushed, that whole thing.
Well, and I remember the discussion being, like, what does it mean? And if there's confusion over the meaning of it, because I would put it differently, Max, not whether the board wants to look at it, it's whether we should be looking at it or not. And if there's some, as Barbara's saying, it was kind of rushed, and if there's confusion over the meaning of that section, then if we have time in a meeting, we should absolutely look at it.
So if it's a question of interpretation, that's something you would, I think you would request the Board of Appeals to do, because they're the ones who have the authority to interpret the document, unless you want to take up the action of doing the ordinance change.
Why don't we take a fresh look at it, and then if that's what we want to do is kick it to the Board of Appeals, but if we read it and we feel comfortable with it, fine. If we don't, then we should kick it to them.
All right, so I assume so if there's not that many applications, I assume next meeting will just be looking at the definition of commercial fisheries and what that means.
What is the name of this thing that you all are talking about? The commercial fishery something or other? Would somebody please say that slowly and clearly for me?
Yep, I can do that. So let me pull it up. So, Susan, it is called the Commercial Fisheries / Maritime Activities District. And it is
Commercial fisheries / what?
Maritime Activities. And it is part of the shoreland districts.
Right, it's in the context of the being in the shoreland district and what is or is not allowed in some of the town-owned properties. Is that correct? Because there was a context to it, it just wasn't in general.
Correct.
Is the word zone at the end of it, is it commercial fisheries, maritime activities zone?
District.
Yes?
No zone. No zone.
I'm not hearing you.
It is not, it doesn't have zone at the end.
Not zone, okay.
District.
District. Thank you.
And to Scott's point, yes, there's only 2 spots in town that this falls under. That's Pine Street Landing and Dutch Neck Marine Park. Both town-owned.
Are there any applications next month, Max, that you know of?
Other than the one that will likely come back. I think there's someone who said that they were gonna submit it, but I haven't heard anything from them for over a month, so I'm gonna say no, only one application.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
Well, if we don't, Max, if we don't have anything in addition to this other, to the applicant coming back, regarding the parking, then maybe just if you can send to everyone before the next meeting, just the abstract of the definition and the sections that it applies to, just a little bit more of the background, so that we can, you know, we can, if we want to look in our land use ordinance or whatever, but at least we'll have a good understanding going in of what it is we want to talk about relative to the maritime uses, et cetera. Okay?
All right.
Great. Anything else for tonight?
I'd just like to add, I appreciate the input, and I'll be a little bit more diligent in articulating my thought process better. So again, I appreciate the input from the board.
All right.
Okay, thank you. So anything else?
No.
I have a motion to adjourn.
Hey, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There being no debate or discussion on a motion to adjourn, all those in favor say aye. Signify aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.